And now public servants on Monday held a peaceful protest against overtaxation by their employer outside Parliament buildings. This comes amid President William Ruto's efforts to have the 2023 finance bill passed that will see all of them surrender 3% of their salaries to finance the construction of affordable houses. Samia Dika takes a look at the raised issues. Let's take a look at that story, come back and talk about it.
Leaving the University of Nairobi Chancellor's Court early morning, the protesters, drawn from the Kenya National Union of Teachers, Kenya University Staff Union, Universities Academic Staff Union, Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentist Union, and Kenya Union of Domestic Hotels, Educational Institutions, Hospital and Allied Workers, among other major unions, marched in unison to Parliament buildings armed with their petition against the proposed Finance Bill 2023. According to the union heads, the bill will greatly hurt those earning little income as opposed to those with good paychecks.
Earning a salary that is beyond 80,000, their percentage is coming down. And naturally for the members of parliament, they are paying 0.003%, not 3%. Hawa watu wanatulagai. Sisi kama hasla hapa chini ndio tunabeba mzigo wa housing levy. Na tunakataa, not overtaxation.
The leaders have also vowed to fully engage their union members in negotiating for better terms as opposed to the previous cases of cowardice.
There will be no room for taking envelopes. Everything we are doing for you must be done on top of the table. We don't want secrets when you are dealing with the workers, and especially when you are targeting workers' money. Your money is your money, and nobody should touch your money without consultation.
However, the House has been cautioned against passing the bill, with the union heads threatening to fully run the protests until the government takes into account their pleas.
Ambia wabunge wetu, sikizeni ground. Sikizeni ground. The ground is saying no. In the unlikely event it goes through, the strike will be on the next day. Yes. And we want all public sector unions to be on the lookout.
Azimio la Umoja members of parliament, led by Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi, have pledged to fight the proposed finance bill, noting that the ordinary mwananchi is set to suffer.
We are going to do whatever it takes, yes, to ensure that these punitive taxes, yes, are not okayed by the House. Yes. We are going to ensure that this finance bill 2023 yes, does not see the light of the day. Hii bill iko na madhara mingi sana. Sio mambo ya housing peke yake. Iko na VAT ya mafuta, iko sijui na VAT ya nini, sijui iko ushuru ya insurance, sijui iko. Sasa mnataka kuishi mkiwa kama mmeweka magoti chini. Wangapi wanakubali hiyo?
With the ball now thrown on the court of MPs, the civil servants are now counting days before they fully suspend their services until they are fully heard. Samedika, Look Up TV, Nairobi.
All right, welcome back then. That's exactly how the state of affairs is, by the way. And I would like us to, if we can then, look at exactly what the Daily Nation spoke about this morning in terms of how they are looking at the special funds that have been introduced by a majority of presidents in previous regimes. They spoke about Mwai Kibaki, they spoke about Uhuru Kenyatta, and they spoke about one now, who is Dr. President William Ruto. William Ruto has essentially, yes, indeed, that's a story right there, introduced the biggest fund yet, 9 billion shillings to be exact. That is it. And that's calling it a fund for every president, then lots of billions. That indeed, all the funds that have been introduced by former presidents have attracted massive corruption scandals in them. So they're saying, why is he going the same route for the funds? But that's not the only thing that Ruto is fighting this week. Ruto is fighting this week not to have the bipartisan talks collapse that are essentially just on the brink of collapse. Number two as well is fighting an opposition that's ready to go back to the street, is also now fighting just to have his government together as they look forward to this bill. And number four, help the nation not to go to the streets, because civil service unions are ready back to the street as we speak now within this stage for public participation. Ofula, let's be real. If you were the president, it seems like you're fighting on so many fronts. And I keep on asking this question this week. What would be ideal for the president right now? I mean, he's presenting a document that is going to be his first, that's going to start writing his legacy. Would you rather not just fight on that front, make sure it passes, but then again, it looks as if there is this aura of nobody listener? Let me ask you this question, and I asked you this question before we went on break.
Yeah.
You would like to think that he put his members of parliament together, essentially when they formed the government, and said, this is how I'm gonna go. So you would like to think he will not be having any opposition from within the government?
One, I want to tell you, if William Ruto can get his priorities right, he'll be able to put his house in order. But what he's facing is pushing the members of parliament who are in his side,
Yes.
to support something that is not, most of Kenyans are against. And you know, all these politicians are looking at the reaction from the crowd. You cannot support something that you see your people are telling you, this thing is not good for us. So, like Wamchomba, what she's telling the president is that my people are against what we are doing. And you know, if you are a politician, you have to do some research on the ground in your area, because you can't say you are representing people and you don't know what they are going through. So I want to tell Mr. President is that the issue of houses is not one of our problem, because the problem we are facing is over taxation, having a bloated executive. We also having a problem of corruption and the misuse of public funds and resources.
Yes.
Misuse in the sense that even him, when he came in office, he started having so many trips that are unrealistic.
Yes.
He went to
some of those trips are born fruits.
He went to
the
Chairman.
deals he signed.
He went to Chairman.
Yes.
He came back. He told us that Chairman is going to employ us. I think that was the most reckless statement that came out of his mouth. You can't be promising us that we'll be employed in Chairman.
Yes.
I want to tell Mr. President is that if he decides, if he's now chosen war to fight with the opposition, they are fighting with the members of parliament who are supporting him. He's also fighting with the Kenyans who are now starving because of failed leadership that he contributed in. We cannot just say that Uhuru Kenyatta brought us all these problems as an individual. William Ruto was a participant, and he participated in sabotaging government, because he was also mentioned in several scandals and corruptions. So I want to tell him that when he campaigned on the platform of Hustler Nation, he ought to have dealt with one thing that can support hustlers. So far, he's doing more worse than Uhuru Kenyatta, because Uhuru Kenyatta, when he came in office, he did not just he didn't choose raising tax as a means of raising government revenue.
Yes.
And Kibaki opened up market. He brought border. He is registration of business. That is on the sense of increasing revenue. Because I heard Mr. President saying, I'm a good student of Kibaki. Kibaki raised taxes. Kibaki did not raise the tax rate. He expanded our economic base,
Yes.
so that to attract investors. During Kibaki, so many investors came in the country. And because they thought there could be a good working environment in Kenya. So right now, William Ruto has made business unfavorable. It's encouraging misuse of public funds. It's encouraging overspending of government.
Yes.
Through petty cash. All his ministries, and including the CAS he created, and having offices of first lady, first daughter, this in the name, wife to the CS, prime CS. That is not a hustler narrative.
Yes.
He's championing for something totally different from what he was preaching while he was on a campaign trail.
What do you think has changed? What do you think has changed?
There's nothing has
Mr.
changed.
Afula.
In fact, we are changing from
Is he not,
from worst to
yes.
from the bad to the worst.
Is he not told us what's changed? That he went to a government thinking that things were in order, but then he found that essentially the previous regime messed it up completely for him. So that's why even the Prime CS is telling us, well, you gotta wait for 3 years, give him more time for him to deliver.
Just few weeks ago,
yes.
the president told people that we are reducing price of unga. It is now 170.
Yes.
It's going to be 100 shillings. Right now, the price of unga is 240.
Yes.
And I told you while I was on this show, I told you that there is nothing that the government has done to reduce the price of flour. Because you can't, as a government, you can't work secretly. Whatever the government is doing, Kenyans are aware. If you have reduced tax, on maize, or we have revoked some of the levies that the government has been levying to the people who are producing flour.
Yes.
That could be explained. But you can't tell me that we are reducing the price of unga and you have not told us what you have done as the President of the Republic or as a government. So he has been lying all through. During the campaign time, he lied to us that he will support hustlers. He is now oppressing hustlers more than Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, I want to tell him, on finance bill, if these parliamentarians will pass that thing, then he will have hard time. In fact, he needs to tell them not to pass that bill, because that one will give him an avenue
yes.
to rescue himself from this mess.
Yes.
You can't champion for something that is against the people's will, because our constitution gives people their rights. You can't violate my fundamental rights, like rights to slash my salary. My friend is a lawyer, will tell you that violates the rights of workers. You cannot slash my salary without without seeking my permission.
Yes.
And the issue, another issue that I've seen with the Kenya Kwanza government is that they are planning to borrow more money from IMF. And we used to have China loans that have been favorable and that have been cheap loans. Because when they give you loan and they come here to construct a road or a railway at their cheap prices, they are giving you, like they are giving us incentive to grow our economy.
Yes.
But the government cannot be in business of building houses. And right now I can tell you, there is no single business that is being run by the government we can treat it as successful.
Yes.
So if the government is running all the businesses in the country which are unsuccessful, how can we now say that they are going to build houses for us? You are slashing my salary, and you are not telling me where you are building my unit. So it seems you want to slash my salary.
Yeah.
You give some of your friends who supported you to form the government a job to do. After building those houses, you will give to your friends. That is what the Ruto is trying to do.
Pretty much. Mr. Ofula, let me just bring in Mr. Macharia on this, by the way. And even as we're talking right now, Kenyans are already trending the hashtag reject the finance bill 2023. One of the most key speakers around this area is lawyer Miguna. By there, let me just read his quote this morning, saying, pull back and listen to Kenyans, withdraw the finance bill 2023 and postpone the implementation of the housing levy. That's exactly what is getting represented here. Number two, there is also now essentially two sides that are developed in this conversation for the finance bill 2023. And I will tell you what it is. And I would like you to go back to your earlier topic. We're going to mention an employees. We've actually seen them on the street. And majority of civil service unions have also said, we are going to hit the streets if you pass this particular bill. Mr. Macharia, it's good to have a loyalist within the government. And we know with Kenya Kwanza has loyalists within the government. And this is what they're saying, that this particular bill has to go through, whether you guys like it or not. All right, and they're presenting the idea that if it doesn't go through, then we have no way for this government to run. Number two as well, there are those who are saying, but listen to us. Stop presenting the idea that it has to go through. So let me ask this question. Even as we're saying, well, it's your right to speak about this bill or not support it, fine, even if you're sitting within the party that is within the government, in fact, majority government, why is the president not telling his loyal boys, his loyalists, not to present the idea that this bill has to pass? Because, Mr. Macharia, we are within the public participation process. It would look as if it's actually indiscipline for you to come and tell me, well, I've given you that bill, have a look through it, debate on it, but guess what? It's going to go through because we are government.
So what is happening? The government, what I feel, the government being the Kenya Kwanza government,
yes,
is trying to twist the leaders or the parliamentarian who are on its side,
yes,
that notwithstanding what everyone is saying, pass it. And you see, that's not how democracy works. Democracy, and the democracy we have in Kenya, entails listening to the people and addressing their needs. You know, what the government is doing in the long run might be a very good plan. But you know, development is a process. You cannot wake up today,
yes,
and tomorrow you have built all the manner of roads that ever exist in the world.
yes.
It's a process. And he's borrowing leaves from a country like Uganda, Singapore, and other countries in where the social aspect of the people is well developed. But then we should not forget that for us to advance, either politically, socially, or economically, it's a process. If the government wants to address the issue of housing, it cannot be addressed overnight. If the government wants to address the issue of the social health,
Yes,
and the pension, it cannot be done overnight. It's a process. And you cannot overburden people to achieve the goals that would, in essence, take time. So the governments need to understand. And this has happened in the past. And this is why parliamentarians are supposed to be independent.
Yes.
And the reason why they exist, the concept of the independence of the government organs, is that the members of the parliament, without fear or favor, they will criticize the government, whether it is the government that took them to the parliament or not. Objectively, they should work so that to benefit the people who voted them in.
That's why I disagree with you, and that's why Wafula is also disagreeing with on you this morning.
Yes.
That you can't be in government, Mr. Macharia, and criticize government. It beats sense of you being in
How
government.
it should happen?
You and I should criticize government.
Yes. How it should happen, if the government want to introduce something, it ought to have internally discussed and agreed on what is being
That's
introduced.
it, isn't it? So are we
What we are seeing,
Yeah.
is just a demonstration that there was no prior agreement by the government.
or proper consultation when
Yes.
coming up with this bill?
By the government
Yes.
itself. And that's why the people are saying if they were consulted, they would have aired their concerns, which would in essence led to reframing of the issues in the bill.
Yes.
Because if the participation happened, they would have been asked, what are your people saying about this? And then they tell the government, so that in the framing of the issues, the people ought to have been consulted and their concerns ought to have been heard. Now that it has not happened, it doesn't mean the people cannot object. It doesn't mean the people will keep mum because the government has said. The Constitution guarantees that the elected leaders
Yes.
to point out their voice, the voice of their representative. And you see, the president is saying this has to work. How we can interpret that, it might be the president's agenda Two, it might be the Kenya Kwanza agenda. And the distinction is, if it is the president agenda, it ought to have been born and addressed by the Kenya Kwanza government so that they can rectify, they can seal the loops, they can seal the gaps in conformity with what the people are saying. But when the president says this has to happen whether you like it or not, he didn't say that though, but you see.
But is Kenya Kwanza loyalists have said it?
Yes.
In fact, let me just read you another quote. You're going to respond on that. Let me just read you another quote from one Senator Cherargei who was saying tutapitisha finance bill kwa sababu rais anahitaji hiyo kodi kuendesha budget. He's the one guy who also said when they were done with formalizing this bill and tabled it for public participation, we need to pass it, nothing needs to be amended, even a full stop on it. They have already said. But when a leader within the Kenya Kwanza government is saying that, who is he telling? Mr. Macharia, who is he telling? When you tell me that this has to go through, whether you like it or not, who are you? Okay, that statement, who is it for? Because it can't be for the opposition. The opposition is on the government.
And you see, the law is not for the utility of the president. I mean, the law is not, it is not the government, the president only who is to be taxed.
Yes.
So if it is the president, and we can, I think it is a misguided notion to say that we are passing the law for the president. It's not for the president. The president is the representative of the people.
Yes.
So if the president's view are contrary to the people's view,
yes,
the people's view should prevail.
Yes.
Because the law is not for the president. The law is not to serve the president. The president is to serve the people through the law. So when we say we are passing the bill for the president, I mean, who gave the president the mandate to rule? Who gave the president the mandate to come up with policies to guide the people? Is the people.
It's the people.
So I think what there should be
is
that even when the president and the people in the Kenya Kwanza are acting, they should act for the benefit of the people after listening to their voice and taking care of their concerns.
Is that not what it is, though? Mr. Macharia, it's going to be very difficult. And you see, the question here that Wamchomba is getting asked is, why would you take that position? I mean, we are government.
Why should he not?
We should be speaking up from the same voice, isn't it? Mr. Wafula, I want you to take 2 minutes because we already have only 3 minutes left for this conversation before, gentlemen, I come and take your closing remarks on this conversation. When a Kenya Kwanza government official comes in and says that this bill has to pass, whether you like it or not, and that government doesn't lose. Those are the statements that we've seen come from the Kenya Kwanza allied members of parliament.
Yes.
Who are they speaking to? Because you're government. When you speak as government, who are you speaking to and for?
So, what I can tell you, they are speaking on behalf of William Ruto.
But to whom? Because this bill,
yes,
all the way straight to yesterday,
yes,
it has been in public participation.
Yes.
It was written for us to participate, give views.
I think what they are trying to do, they are trying to push the members who are aligned to Kenya Kwanza government to support the bill.
That's it. Mr.
They are
Wafula,
trying to bulldoze.
That's why it is then. I should ask that question.
Yes.
If the president knows very well that you shouldn't speak about this bill that way when it's within public participation, why didn't he stop them? We've seen those statements all over. Some of them could be as...
It is a collection of lies. You know, the president is lying to the country. Members of parliament who are supporting him, they are lying to the country.
But he comes out as an honest man. He says, I don't even drink. I've thought about this particular one in a clear and concise manner. Is it Missy Mulevi? He organized the budget. He's even telling you that I've drawn this budget from Mwai Kibaki's lessons.
But I'm telling you, even Mackenzie, he doesn't take alcohol. And in fact, we are trying to, we will end up investigating people who doesn't take alcohol. But actually separating the mind.
Mr. Fuller, 1 minute before I take your closing.
So I want to tell you, my friend, is that Kenya Kwanza government has not addressed the issues they promised Kenyans to address. They have not supported Mama Mboga, they have not supported Mutu Apoda. They are now coming up with their finance bill, which is going to impoverize people. Because if you are taking money from the people,
in 45
you cannot
seconds.
say that is you are increasing income. In fact, that is, you are now making them to making their life miserable. So I want to tell Kenyans that this is the right time. We need to rise up. We need to stand against this government, and we need to prepare someone to take over from this current regime. Because when you look at the opposition, they also seem to be disorganized. And they are disorganized in the sense that they are the reason why William Ruto rose to power. They kept on playing politics of street, just throwing words with no action.
Yes.
We need to lead a serious movement that will dismantle this regime.
Pretty much. All right.
On my last comment is that we also need to involve religious leaders, because we have seen most of these religious leaders are being used by this government to lie to the people. They are preaching what William Ruto is preaching to us. And William Ruto is a hypocrite. And most of our religious leaders, they don't represent a picture of godly people.
Pretty much. All right. 10 seconds, Mr. Macharia.
What I would say,
Yes.
People need to understand that we do not make laws for the president. The laws are made for and by the people. That's why the Constitution provides for public participation. And I'm telling you, and this I can guarantee, if that bill goes through without any amendment, the day that follows, we will rush to court to object the unconstitutional propositions that seeks to, they are like crowbacks to the gains we have gotten as the people of Kenya. Public participation, you have the right to be heard and the right for your member of the parliament to represent you, no matter how the divide shifts. We saw Irungo Kangata.
Yes.
He wrote openly to the president when the indoors could not solve the issues. He came out publicly.
Yes,
so this is what I'm saying. And if the government of the day will not address the issues raised by the people, that will happen. And it has started happening. So the earlier they deliberate on the issues, the earlier they take serious the concerns of the Kenyans, better for them. Otherwise, they will keep on fighting from each front, and which is not beneficial to them.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming into the studios this morning. Take them back online to the time that you joined us in the studio at Lookup TV across all your social media platforms. And thank you very much for watching this morning as well. We take a tiny breather. Once we come back, I'll be joined by different guests this morning as we look at other issues within the economy. Good morning.